I'll go through these. We have a set of slides for resources that Claris is providing for everybody, and some you might be aware of already. So we got community insights, and that's kind of one of the first places we go to search if we run into a problem. That's the first question. Has anybody searched the community for feedback? And a lot of times we find the answer or find a trail that leads us to the answer we're looking for. So that is a very valuable place to go. Then Explorer Labs that you can sign up for. And I actually sign up for some of these just to get a little more familiar so that I understand more what the developers are talking about and understand more for our client communications and blog posts and things like that. Doesn't hurt to learn a little more. And then office hours, one-on-one coaching. I'm not sure that's too well known, but that's pretty cool. Just free time, might as well take advantage of it. And then Community Live. We've probably all been to a few of those, which are usually very helpful. Contact Rosemary if you want to be a guest. And job board. And training. So a lot of plentiful options. You can't say you don't know, or you can't say you're stuck. You got a lot of ways to get unstuck.
When we shipped FileMaker 2025 in early July, we did a series of 4 community lives, and one of those was on the enhancements we made to AI in that release. And so this is just a reprise of that. You may have a resource deck from that presentation, but I wanted to, as a intro to the demos demo that Doug is going to do, to review that, and some of you may be seeing this for the first time, and this was like the high level of how we teed up the 2025 release, and so we made some significant continued enhancements in AI following FileMaker 2024, where we did a lot with semantic search, and then really going all the way back into the late 20 teens, where we began to put in on iOS and then Mac OS things like Core ML for machine learning, that sort of thing. So it's been a while, but since we've been enabling the platform with AI capabilities, but the big one was what happened in FileMaker 2025. And so what I'll do is I'll review some of the new scripts and some of the new functions at a high level that we put in, and then that will be the lead up to Doug's presentation. But I start with, and of course, on the right there is in the script workspace, there is a category of artificial intelligence, and you will have noticed if you've been paying attention there that in FileMaker 2025, that list grew quite a bit. You can see everything that I'm going to talk about will be represented in that list. But I start with these 3 because, and the reason I do is we have put a lot of powerful capability related to being able to leverage LLMs with your FileMaker databases. If you have not actually played around with FileMaker and LLMs, maybe you've done things with ChatGPT or Grok or those sorts of things, you've chatted with it, you've got a general sense. There is a lot of power and control. But if you're just trying to get your head around what these new capabilities are, these are the places to start. The generate response from model is sort of the key script, and then there's 2 additional things that allows you either to do SQL queries via natural language or finds via natural language. So versus say going into FileMaker and find mode and then having to put in the exact term you're looking for, and you don't get a result if you didn't use the right term. This is a bit different in that a person can freeform ask a question, and then it essentially will return the results based on that. And there's a lot more detail to that. So these are the key for unlocking the power as you can go further and further down the rabbit hole, if you will, of what you can do with AI. And because of that, and subsequent to the July launch of this, we also have a new training. It's in the community in the Claris certifications, because it's both a training as well as a certification you want to. It's by Mark Levershell, Productive Computing. It is an excellent introduction to those three scripts and the capabilities. It's got a number of demo files and video recordings, and it's a great way to begin to get your feet wet if you haven't yet in there. So I highly recommend that. Mark's a master trainer, does a fantastic job of that. I highly recommend that. You can go in and take this course, download the files, and play with it. There are additional scripts we also have in perform RAG action. This is something that Doug will talk about today. Essentially, being able to query data that you have in container fields and PDFs and that sort of thing, which is a very powerful capability. Then other things like, as you may be aware, a big part of leveraging AI or LLMs is the prompting that you need to do to make sure that what you're getting back from the large language models is what you expect, and accuracy and prompting has a lot to do with that. And the more context you can give to the LLM about what you're looking for, often what I'll do is I will tell it who I am. I'm the Claris Platform Evangelist. What I'm doing, I'm putting together a presentation for both our internal enablement as well as external third-party developers of X, Y, and Z, right? And then I'll say, here's the information that I have, and here's what I'm looking for. And the more that you can give it the context, the more likelihood you're going to get back what you might expect, the more you could reduce things like hallucinations and that sort of thing, because LLMs aim to please, right? So if they don't know the answer, they might just confabulate the next possible answer. They may offer you the solution to something that is a script step or a calc, but that script step or calc doesn't even actually exist, right? So the reason I go into that long prelude is that one of the capabilities is you can build in to your systems prompt templates that when you're asking the question, it's getting its context from that prompt template, and that gives you greater control over the kind of results you get back. And then we have things like configure regression model as well. We have continued in 2025 to make refinements to the semantic search and vector embedding that we had introduced in FileMaker 2024. So those are improved as well. And then we introduced AI services, and I think Doug will talk or show some of this later as well. And this is a bit different in that it is a new tab in the server admin console called AI services that allows you to spin up your own local models. You go to Hugging Face, download a model, and run it. The caveat there is what that allows you to do if you run your own model locally. You don't have to take your data or your proprietary sort of schema and business logic and send it out to the cloud, if you will, where it may then be part of training of other models. You may end up giving out PII information or that sort of thing. And if you don't want to do that because of the nature of what you're doing, then you can run your own models. The caveat is, though, that running these large language models is very resource intensive at the GPU level. So it really needs a different kind of machine than a FileMaker server. And we strongly caution not to try to run a local model in a FileMaker server on the same box, because more than likely, unless it's a really small model, it will bring the server to its knees. And so we make recommendations for the hardware. Apple has probably the best hardware out there as far as bang for the buck on supporting these models. But if you're running your own models, there's going to be a cost incurred, either in having a separate machine that you can run the models on, or in having a private cloud service that then you're going to pay probably even more on a monthly basis. So, and then the other caveat is we are just about to get out the door in a week or two, the FileMaker Cloud 2025, which then has parity with FileMaker 2025 launch back in July. And that will then have all of the capabilities of AI that we put in 2025, except for the AI services, the nature of, since it's a managed service at AWS with Apple in the background, we can't really spin up, arbitrary models and servers. But other than that, we'll support everything. And then we did introduce a few new functions as well associated with these capabilities. For instance, you can now query and get the information back from the RAG space. This may be something that Doug talks about today. And then there's some more advanced things as you get more and more familiar with the kinds of things you can do and what you can leverage in your custom business apps. You've got a lot of power, things about like normalizing embeddings or adding and subtracting embeddings that allow you to do some very interesting things that are maybe domain specific and that kind of thing. And so there's a accompaniment of those as well. I have a few screenshots here before we get into the demo. This is, you see there's a lot going on in the script, right? This is the generate response from model, where you're going to put in your API key in the model that you're using, and then that script allows you to do a number of different things. Even the calling tools, which essentially you're taking something that's either in a custom function or a script step, and then doing work based on that. So this is like the key sort of upper new script step that were a lot of things that you'll be doing with AI and LLMs inside FileMaker you're going to pass through. Here is the script step for perform a SQL query by natural language. And remember, there's two of these. There's the perform find by natural language, which is essentially taking a FileMaker find and essentially making it so that you don't have to know the exact precise term that you're using, or knowing where it might be. But by simply speaking or typing in, it can find all those things that are statistically significantly associated with that term. But the SQL one's a bit different in that because it's SQL, then it allows you to do things that aren't necessarily bound to the table occurrence and the layout that you're on that you would find with finds. And of course, the other thing that's nice about that is you could actually ask it a question, trap for the SQL that it generates, and then take that SQL and then use it as a way of having to write the SQL statement rather than if you're doing execute SQL in FileMaker. So you sort of have some nice side effects there as well. And then I just grabbed a quick screenshot of one of the new functions, which the get drag space info that's in there as well. There's about 4 or 5 functions there as well. And at this point, and then here before we go into the demo, I think this is the last screenshot I have. This is the FileMaker admin console for FileMaker 2025 with the new AI services tab, and then when you turn that on, it allows you to then jump into Hugging Face, which has hundreds, if not thousands, of models of all different varieties, some with billions and billions of parameters that are very powerful but need powerful hardware. And there are some things that are much more lighter. And so it all just depends upon what it is you're trying to do. There's a lot of testing that people look at as they look at potential models and do some experimentation on how light can it be where I can still get back reliable results, or, do I want it to be so powerful that I'm willing to get a pretty beefy machine out there to allow it to be extremely accurate or that sort of thing. So I think Doug will talk about that as well. And at this point, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to you, Doug.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, Rick. Uh, Afternoon, everyone. So for those that haven't met, my name is Doug Wallis. I am similar to Rick. I'm what we call now a platform evangelist. Our job is basically is to make sure people understand what we've built for them and get people to actually try the new features that we've created over over the years so that they can make better apps and better systems, whether it's for their own purposes, for their customers, or internally. I'm gonna do some demos around the one of the new features that we had in FileMaker 2025 around RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. Um, but before I get there, I'm going to go through different steps to make sure that people understand how the whole system kind of works, and so you can actually make use cases. So I'm not really sure if everyone's used AI inside of FileMaker in the last version. So I'm going to go through a couple of steps to make sure that everyone's on par, and then you understand why we're actually sort of doing various sort of features and new script steps and functions in FileMaker with AI. Uh, so to start off with, let's start with the AI services that Rick was talking about. So I'm having to use in Chrome. I don't really big fan of Chrome, prefer Safari, but there's a bug currently in Safari for those who actually have Tahoe, where if you have button at the bottom of the page, it doesn't work properly. Anyway, so this is basically my FileMaker server running. It's running on my MacBook, so I've got a M3 Pro, so for testing purposes, it works really nicely. For playing around with it, it's fine. But I would say in production environment, you actually want to do exactly what I'm doing. So essentially, is on the new FileMaker server, we can you can run both the database engine and the AI model serving engine. What is not ideal because we have a licensing system that allows you to actually have multiple install of FileMaker on different machines. You could potentially install FileMaker server on a machine, not have any databases running on it, and be able to actually just run the AI services on that machine. So it will actually do anything around the database or data management. It will just run model. In the near future, we are working on enabling you when you do an install of FileMaker server to be able to install what we will call an AI model server. So basically, using the Claris server FileMaker admin console, have an interface where you only run the AI services. There's nothing else around the database running, and so that way you can actually run your models in a nice and easy way. The way that we've done this is before that, you had to actually go through a blog that we had on the engineering blog of Claris, where you had to go multiple steps of installing Python and all of that, and it was a bit of a pain. So what we did is basically we created a shell script in the background that's going to ask you to download something called Miniforge, which is a script that will install an environment for Python and Conda, which is basically what is being used to run LLM services on servers. It's going to basically install everything for you in the background, and then you're going to be able to actually run AI models on your local servers. So they can be on a Mac, Windows, Linux machine. They can be on a Mac Mini if you have internally. They can be on AWS. Doesn't really matter where you actually sort of put it. And allows you to be able to actually use any type of services that we support currently on FileMaker. So essentially, the services that we provide through the AI server in FileMaker is to be able to actually do text or image embedding, text generation, something RAG, like I mentioned before, and then fine tuning. So embedding basically is transforming data, so whether it's text or images, into a multi-dimensional vector embedding. So basically, it's words being linked to one another based on the context. So imagine you have the word apple in your system as text. It will be linked to the word orange, but it's going to be linked to the word MacBook, iPhone, iPad, and so on. So iPad is not going to be linked to orange, but they'll have one way to be linked to the word Apple. So it's a multi-dimensional link between words and stuff like that. Generation is what basically everyone uses with ChatGPT, and is basically about prediction of answers based on the context. So you give it information, and then there's an algorithm that looks after the context, try to find words, and that's how basically the response are being written. RAG is about retrieval augmented generation, which essentially is you're feeding data to a model with another model. So it's the model plus the RAG, and those two work together to be able to actually bring answers based on the information you gave it. So imagine you have a kind of a ChatGPT or GPT basically model running on your server, and you have a huge amount of documentation, and you want to search through your PDFs or text. You would embed your PDFs with your RAG environment and use the model to actually sort of talk to it. And I'll some demos afterwards around that. So the iServer works the same way that any other tab inside of FileMaker. You have on and off switches, and you can actually run through that. This is the endpoint. So basically, this is the URL that you're going to use in your FileMaker script to be able to talk to your server. The Hugging Face token is a token you basically get from the Hugging Face website that allows you to be able to link your server to your Hugging Face account. So if there is a model you want to use that has a kind of a license agreement, you would be able to actually use that token to actually validate that. So if I go quickly to Hugging Face, for those that have actually never seen it, this is basically the biggest place on the planet to be able to find models. So it's a massive AI community. It's a French-run company, so French are really good for that. And essentially, it's pretty much where you're going to find every type of model. So currently, as of today, you've got just a tiny bit more than 2 million models available through that. And there are models in a lot of different environments. Essentially, the one you're going to be using if you do RAG or if you do text generation is this one, text generation. Again, the list is very long, but it gets to be shorter. Depending on the device you're using, you basically, if you're using a MacBook, so you have the Apple chip on it, you would use a library based on LMX, which is basically the core element within the Apple Silicon. If you have other devices, like Windows or Linux, you can use different sort of systems, and then you have all the links. And if I do by most downloads, basically you have kind of the big ones. The thing which is important to actually know about sort of models is the size that they do take, because the more information you're going to send it, the better it's going to be able to actually give you a correct answer. But based on information that is inside the model, it's going to be able to actually treat your data in a good or bad way. So if I go to the first one, which is this GPT-based environment, so it's built by OpenAI. It's a version that's from like 3 years ago. Now it's fully available to the market. It is kind of a beefy model. It has 21 billion parameters. So in order to build this model, they've used a huge amount of data, which means the size of it is actually kind of big. And so if it's too big, you need to actually have the right machine, which is like when Rick was mentioning, we have on our website this new blog that we've written with Claris partners around making sure you have the right kind of machine to be able to actually run that. If you're running basically on a MacBook or anything from Apple, there is a great piece of software to be able to actually sort of test whether a model is going to be run to actually on your system. So it's called LM Studio. So LM Studio basically just runs models on your machine. But one thing which is really cool is they've actually built a system to be able to actually check whether your machine is going to be able to actually sort of run it. In most cases, so if I copy the link from this one and I search for here, is my machine. So my machine basically has, so it's M3 Pro. It has 16 gig of RAM and about 14 GPU. So it's kind of saying that it's fine, but it's only 12 gig. Yeah. So just by launching it, it's going to take 12 gig of my part of my memory for my MacBook. And if I have data and the whole system, it's going to have issue basically being able to actually sort of use it. And so that is the one thing you want to be careful is once you start using text generation side FileMaker or even RAG or stuff like that, make sure basically you have the right machine to be able to actually sort of do that. If you don't want to run it on your machine, you can use stuff like OpenAI or Anthropic or Claude or all the sort of stuff out there. It means you have to exchange data with them, but it stays within your closed environment. So you're not sharing with the whole of the world. It's basically inside a closed environment that only belongs to you. And now recently they made updates to the ULEs from other companies where you have the option for your data to be never used with any of the services from the providers. and for your data to be deleted as soon as you actually sort of stop talking to it. So it's safe, it's secure, and again, like I've said to everyone, there is a big difference between OpenAI, the company, and ChatGPT, which is a service offered by OpenAI. But ChatGPT is not using your data that you have with your OpenAI account because those are two different sort of products. So your data is actually kind of safe. So Hugging Face is where your models are going to be used. You've got all those settings. You can actually sort of play around with it. You can have API keys. So if you want to create a system and it's being used from the outside, you can control that. There's a bit of settings around RAG. Essentially, it's telling you where you want to save your virtual augmented generation information. It is again encrypted. It is again kind of vector embedding kind of information. So it's not going to mean anything to you. Essentially, it's just basically text and numbers, so it doesn't mean much to it. But it allows you to actually sort of control some stuff. If you want to use OpenAI as an account to be able to actually interact during your chatting session in FileMaker, you can enable that. And then this is the model that basically OpenAI will actually use. There's some stuff on fine-tuning. We'll do some other time because it's a bit more complex. This is the keys where if you want to basically use an API key in your FileMaker script, this is where you're going to create that. And this is the area where you're going to download various models to be able to actually sort of use it. So by default, we have 3 models pre-set up on your machine. They're not downloaded, so you just have to do it at the beginning. And then this is the one that I'm using. So I was trying to find a text generation model that's very small that can run on my machine without going berserk and be able to actually run some demos. On our website, we have a technical page where we call out the models that we support. Essentially, there's 2 from Google, but you need kind of a beefy machine. If you've got less than 32 gig, both those models will have issues unless you have a Mac Studio, in which case the CPU is much better. And yeah, if you have 32 gig, they would work fine. Otherwise, you can use some public ones. The last one that I have is this one. I tried to actually get it to work, but it's very small and doesn't do much. If you have a Mac, and I think it will actually work the same way on the machine, basically is when you do the FileMaker server install on your machine, there's going to be a FileMaker LLM folder created within your library folder. So inside that, it has all the information about the environment that runs the model. So everything around Conda, it has everything around Python. Then it has all the scripts and the Python script to be able to actually deploy everything internally. So that's done automatically in the background. This is where the cache of your RAG is going to be saved. And then at the top, under a hidden folder, you'll see basically you've got Hugging Face and then you have all the models. So the one that I use, which is this one for check generation, is very small. It only has 1 billion parameters, so kind of very small. It's been quantified, so it's done in a way that makes it even smaller, and it's about just on less than 100 megabyte, which means that it can give me reply, but it has very little sort of information as a whole. So it's kind of dumb. So it's when I compare models, basically is I normally compare like ChatGPT 5 is actually like talking to a 5-year-old. So it has a bit more information, it knows a bit more things, but you have to explain it a lot of information in your prompt to be able to actually give you the right answer. This one is roughly like talking to a 6-month-old baby, and you're just trying to actually get it to actually be using the spoon to actually feed itself if it can do it. So it's really low down. It doesn't do much, but it's good for actually sort of testing it. And then I've got my transformers. So that's for text, images, and that's multi-language. So just looking at a image embedding model of a medium quality to be able to interpret images into embeddings is 1 gigabyte. If I were to use some of the one that I showed you, it would be like I think the GPS OS is about 6 or 7 gig. No, actually it's more. It's 12 gig. And there's new ones you have on the market coming out now that have 1 trillion parameters, and those are about like half a gig. which means you need huge machine and it tends to actually cost quite a lot. So always be careful. The other thing is you'll see in the months to come is everyone's talking about LLM, so large language model. There is a tendency now to actually have things called SLM, which is small language models, which essentially are models trained on specific data. Essentially, if you are doing so a lot of models pretend that they can understand hundreds of different languages to be able to actually help you code very quickly in a lot of environment. But if you're just doing Python scripting, you don't really need 100 languages to be known by your LLMs. You just need Python. So they are creating Python-specific models or JavaScript. So they're very small models, but just doing one stack specifically, and even specific market like medical environment, legal environments. Those type of models will be created because there's no need to actually have so much information because actually you're going to provide the PDF, the text information to make the model actually a lot smarter. So once downloaded, make sure you have them in memory. And then the last part is around fine tuning. So we're going to go through RAG at first. But before we go into RAG, I'm going to start with a quick demo on one of the new script steps that we created, which is basically transforming a PDF into text so that you can actually have a model talking to it. Let me just remove all of that. So I'm just going to add a PDF, which essentially is, so it basically is a screenshot from the Claris help guide, I think. So general response for model, basically. So I just basically export the information into PDF, and I'm basically going to feed that to a model, and I'm going to start asking questions around it. So essentially, scripting is really straightforward. Once you've actually configured your account, so you can use stuff like OpenAI, Cohere, whatever. We'll still have be able to use Google Gemini as well. So if I think it's basically is you configure your account, you enable that, and then I've added my PDF, and then we're going to generate response. So essentially what I'm doing in this case is I'm using the new, so generate model, generate response from model. So what I've got to do is basically give it the account name that I'm using, which is the one I created in my configure account script step, the model that I want to use. So this one's going to use GPT-4o. I could use 5 because it's kind of cool. There's a prompt. I'm going to basically send it the information. And essentially what I'm doing in the prompt is I'm sending my question, and at the same time, I am sending the text from the PDF. So I'm taking in that record PDF and then using get text from PDF, transform all the text inside the information into text, feed it to the model. Then I basically wanted to actually give me a response. I've got the option to be able to control messages, so I can actually store in memory all the information that it's giving me, so that the model knows that every time I ask it a new question, it's not starting from scratch. It knows there's a message history. It knows the question I've asked before. So if I refine my question, the answer should be better. So I've limited to actually sort of 10 messages being sent in memory, and then I'm streaming it. So it gives the impression that when the answer is being written, it's actually doing multiple stuff in the background, so it's a lot quicker. You've got the option to actually work as an agentic model. Some of the early models of text generation need that because that way it would be able to kind of lock it to actually do the answer and do other thing on the side. So depending on the model, it's not something you have to do. You've got instructions. Essentially, instruction is telling the model, hey, I want you to do it this way. So if you say, give me all the answers in French, that's where you put information. And then you can control stuff like with temperature, the quality. There's a lot of stuff you can do in the background, but we'll just go through that for time being. So basically, I got my PDF, and I'll just ask it is, can you write a FileMaker script with this information? So submit that. Basically, that information has been sent down to OpenAI, then basically gives me the answer back. Not everything is accurate because it's only taking information that is provided by the PDF. So sometimes you'll see sort of strange stuff, but then you can actually sort of get it to give you a better response. The reason I'm talking about it is what it's actually doing in this case. It's actually taking my question and information from my PDF and then exchanging that with the model. But if I had more documents, I would need to actually ask the question differently to make sure that it could go through multiple stuff. And that's where basically RAD is going to be kind of useful because it's going to allow you to actually create on your servers an environment where all your PDFs are going to be stored within the various RAG script steps. We're going to do kind of the same work. We're going to basically transform your PDF into text and into embeddings and get the models to actually work with the embeddings to kind of work together. So it's going to be a mixture of text embedding and text generation working together to be able to actually sort of do some of the work for you. So I've got this other file where I'm going to basically add a couple of PDF documents and actually start asking questions. So one of the things that we are trying to do internally within Apple and within Claris is in some cases is like we have a huge amount of information, whether we're using stuff in Jira, in FileMaker solutions, in God knows how many systems that we have. Now we're using, like everyone else, we're using Workday for HR purposes. There's like information pretty much everywhere. And the problem is what's really hard is you might be able to figure out where the information actually is being stored, but when you're asking the question, you have to actually go through a huge amount of documentation because you're not really sure what the information is actually being stored. And there's a lot of like partners or customers or even stuff that I see on the internet with different stuff is like where we have those employee onboarding materials, we have documentation for employees to actually sort of know stuff about their equipment they should be getting it. One, they can renew the MacBook they have been given by the company, number of holidays, all the basic information is actually there somewhere. It's like, but it's really hard to be able to actually sort of find it. And in most cases, what you do have is you have the information stored inside a PDF. So when I was playing around with it, I was trying to actually find public available data on Apple or Claris about employee onboarding and stuff like that. And anything I could basically show you is like business policies within Apple, but everything else basically is under NDA and it's not allowed to actually go out. So I had to actually go on the internet and figure out how to actually find it. And it was really hard. I mean, it basically is not a lot of company actually sharing the way they onboarding their customers. Anyway, so looking around, I actually did find this onboarding PDF, which has information and it's for people to, if they have no onboarding plan, this is how they could actually build it and be able to actually sort of play with it. So it's got 18 pages. It's kind of a small one, but basically it gives you some information about what is onboarding, stuff that you should do. So the example I'm going to do basically is insert that PDF inside my FileMaker solution and then start chatting with it to be able to actually find information. So the step that we have to go through are kind of straightforward. So the first one, easy one, I'm basically adding that document to my file. And at the same time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send that PDF to my server that's running on my machine so that it could be used with the rack server. So in order to be able to actually sort of do that, so basically what I do is I always start using set AI call logging. So basically that creates a log file where it kind of outlines a lot of information about logging. So it tells you when you're actually sort of creating the configuring the accounts. It's kind of useful to actually have that kind of information. It doesn't expose everything that you're doing. So it doesn't give you like your token count. It doesn't tell you the data that was actually sent out from FileMaker back into it. It's really basically like the calls you're making and a bit to actually sort of lock that in. If you want to do a bit more of the, I want to see what comes in and out, you can use LM Studio because it has a way to be able to actually log everything, but that's only for testing purposes. Because um, if you see the information and because it's kind of text information, you could get people trying to hack into your servers and be able to actually find it. So you want to be careful how you're using it. Next step essentially afterwards is configure the RAG account. So what is the account where I'm going to send my information and where it's going to be stored. The thing you have to do is basically you've got to create a account name. You can have as many account names on your FileMaker server as you want. It doesn't really matter where they are. You can have one, and you can have one for different, I would say, specialties. So if you had one for, I don't know, sales enablement, you would actually create an account for that, and then you can have one for employee satisfaction, whatever, for every different part of the account and you want to talk to, you can actually have that. Then you've got your endpoint. So that's basically that URL is what you get from the admin console. And then if you create a key, that's where you would store it, then create for that demo, and that's where you can actually have it. And then if you have SL certificate, you can make sure that everything is actually being sort of secure. So this is really straightforward. It allows you to actually sort of create that account just to make sure that it's fine and running. Then the next step we have to go through essentially is performing the action of inserting information into the RAG or actually removing. So the option that you have is, first of all, you have to actually tell it which RAG account name you're going to talk to. Then you have a space ID. So within one account, you can have multiple spaces. So let's say again, you have sales enablement. You can have a space ID for, I know, procedure for RMAs, a procedure, an area for whatever environment. And depending on who you want to, which area you want to talk to, then you're only going to be talking to that space. That's kind of useful when you have a huge amount of information. So last week I was in Italy at a conference and I was talking to a company that's trying to make a solution for legal information requirements in Italy. And Italy is one of those countries that has a huge amount of laws specifically for the whole country, the region, the kind of the equivalent of a county, the city, and stuff like that. And sometimes some laws contradict themselves. So that's Italy for you, but that's one of the issues that they kind of have. And the problem is when they first start using RAG, is they basically chopped everything into one area, and it was kind of a pain to be able to actually sort of make sure that the information they were giving is actually the right one. So they were starting to use the space IDs because they could say is if within the question someone's asking about local laws or bylaws, whatever, use that space ID. So they had a registry of space IDs linked to whether it was country, county, city, or other places like that. And it held basically the model only work with third-party information and not everything, because otherwise it can actually get confusing. Then you have the option for the action, so you can go through add data, remove data, or send a prompt. So essentially, adding data is you're adding the PDF or the text. Removing data is if you want to remove basically the information from the space, and then you can actually do that. The RAG can actually come from multiple areas. So it could be a text, so it can be directly from a field. It can be from a file that's actually that you're going to call from the outside, or a container. And then we have two ways of actually doing it. It can be one go. So if I have a small container, I just send a container and then it just runs synchronously with my script. Or if you have very large PDFs or files, you can use the async option, which means that it's going to run in the background and let basically your script be able to actually finish, and it's going to be a lot quicker. And then when you have a container, it actually tells you the field that you need to actually use. That's basically all the option that you have. So that's pretty much all you have to do to be able to add the data to your system. The next step after we're going to go is we're going to basically have to actually sort of talk to my server. So I'm going to create a configure AI account. Essentially is the account name of my FileMaker AI server. I'm using the custom because I'm using the local one. It's the endpoint, there's no key. And then the RAG option is I basically now send a prompt. So using the form RAG action, I'm going to basically make sure I've got the right name for the account name, the right space ID, the action is send prompt. Then I've got a field for the question. I have basically to tell it to make sure that this is the AI account that I'm talking to, because that script step is going to do two things. It's going to basically make sure that I'm talking to the right area, and it's going to transform, it's going to basically pick out the embeddings and make sure information is being sent properly to the account so that it can actually do in the background the text generation. This is the model that I'm going to use. Stream is off because for that model, it can't handle streaming. And then where the answer has been stored, I actually put it in the field, but it could be stored anywhere else. A couple of other things you can do is you can use the prompt template name. So you have the option to be able to actually create a prompt template, where essentially it's where you give it a lot of information about the context of the question you're going to ask, based information. So if I show you on the website, configure prompt template essentially is where you're creating the different type of template you want to have. So it can be SQL queries, it can be find request or RAG prompts. Essentially is where you're telling it for the RAG prompts is you kind of limit you're kind of really explaining it's a bit like instruction, but it's making it's done in a way that you can store it someplace and actually not having to actually worry about it too much. You're limiting and you're telling really how you want the context to be handled by the text generation. So if you want to basically get it to make sure that it's speaking to you in a polite way, or whether you're making sure that every answer is of a certain length, or it's uh, recalculating the fact that the date between today and when it was trained is getting bigger every day. So it can tell you that the answer based on what it knew 6 months ago was this and stuff like that. So it's basically kind of giving limits to how the model is going to respond to your system. So it's basically JSON sort of stuff you can put in there. You can add it whatever information you want it to do, but it's kind of a nice way to be able to actually sort of store some of the thing you want to do. And that's pretty much it. The other option you have as well is parameters. So that's a bit more sort of shorter. You can actually put it like, tell it that today's date is this date, or that my name is Doug, and then whenever you give me an answer, call me Doug, whatever, but you can actually sort of control it from here. The last one that I have basically is removing basically drag. So I want to make sure that whenever I deleted a PDF from my system, I need that information to be removed as well from the RAG in the space ID, because otherwise it's going to keep giving me answers in the information. So if it's stuff that you're doing like on a CRM system, every time, and if you use, I don't know, customer data with the RAG, if you delete records, you got to make sure that the perform RAG action is actually being used to remove data. Otherwise, it's still going to use that even though the record has been deleted from your system. So let's see what it does in action. So I'm going to add a document. So what it's created, basically, it's added the document, it's picked out the name. If I quickly look at the data viewer, I think, so this is so basically is what I'm asking is like, okay, I've got this RAG, I've got this space ID. Can you give me basically the name, the value of every file that I've got in that space? I've only got one for the time being. I'm going to add another one. I've got two. And then if I go here, it's just the one because I'm asking for the last one. And this is basically all the value that it's giving me. So basically it's saying you have two entries currently in your space. This is the model basically that I'm going to start talking to. This is your ID, and this is the different document that you have with the file name and then the ID of all of them. So it's a nice way to be able to actually track. And then sometimes, in some cases, if one is being deleted and you want to figure out, that's basically what you're going to have to actually use. Again, this is the same stuff in a clear way, but this is a nice way to figure out what is inside your system. So now I'm going to actually ask it a question. So if I say it again, what is my name? So it has no information around that. There is nothing around this. The reason it's actually picking this is I'm assuming one of the two author of one of those document is actually Sherry Hallway. I don't know where it is actually stored. And I can ask it, and who is Cheryl? Oh, good one. So again, because I'm using this really sort of small model, it has issues sometimes being able to actually sort of give me right information. So I have this sentence that I'm basically going to try with it. I'm going to try this one in the other file to actually sort of give you the idea of the importance of having good AI. So this is my model. This is a query that I'm actually sort of ask it to give me. So this is taking the PDF again, and it's generating the stuff. This is using OpenAI GPT-4's 0. So it's taking the whole document and it's able to actually sort of give me a proper answer. The problem with this is it has to go through this, and the model is not really powerful. But if I say is I'll just go, how long is the onboarding for a new hire? See what it says. So 2 documents, it basically putting from both environment. I'm going to do is actually delete the last one because the data is not really good in that one. Just use that one. I'll just remove everything. Clear my rack, so remove everything. Done. And then we add, we add just this one. And ask the question again. So this is the if we go on it, it basically, if we go what new equipment is given to a new hire. So basically it's really basic information. And this is essentially is, even though I've actually fed it the whole PDF, you have a model that doesn't actually have that much capacity, runs really kind of locally, really small, so it doesn't actually sort of do much. If I had a bigger machine, or if I use OpenAI Cohere, you could actually ask it a better question. So configure prompt model. So this one again is something I was like, okay, how am I going to use it? And if I give it a long answer and if I explain what I'm looking for, let's see what it can give me. So this is talking to OpenAI, and because I'm explaining a bit better information that I'm giving it, it actually sort of gives me a better answer, and then it's able to actually generate stuff in a nicer way. So this is the importance of basically of using the right model. In other cases, I would say that for basic sort of work, you can use a local model. As soon as you want to start using stuff like maybe like RAG, you're going to need a model that is actually clever enough to be understand the context of everything you're asking and be able to actually relate proper information. And so if you're on a Mac world, you would need something like at least top of end M4 Mac Mini or Mac Studio, or like one of the latest. I'm pretty sure the M5 that just came out today will be so much better now with the memory they've actually put inside it that you can actually run it really nicely. But this is some stuff you're going to be careful about. That's what I had on RAG. The other thing again, so we have this blog that we created early in summer. We work with ProofGuide and Soliant to actually work on it. It has some really nice information around what you should be using and stuff like that. And on top of it, there is a long white paper. If you haven't read it, make sure you go through it because it will give you some nice pointers on how the whole system kind of works, different between, especially the Mac world and the Windows and Ubuntu world, which are a bit of different. But it's going to help you figure out the type of machine you need, whether what you have is going to work for your system, and if it doesn't, what you'll be able to actually sort of do. But again, for the RAG is could work internally or could work externally, really up to you to be able to actually sort of play around with it. I was doing also some tests with the old PDF that we have from the FileMaker training series to be able to see whether it could write a script for me. So it's kind of a long file, so you would need to actually use the async to get it processed. But when I'm using with the OpenAI embedding, it's actually kind of cool because you can actually ask it proper question, and in other cases, it can give you the right answers. And then when using parameters and instructions and the template, you can actually create an environment where it would be possible for the model to give you the script steps and all this. I mean, be able to actually write a script for you and give you everything in the right order so that you could actually recreate it inside of FileMaker. Some of the work that we're trying to do internally is kind of the same way using like XML, where it would be able to actually write script for you in the background really easily. What is there to support the article you just showed? You mean for the blog entry? That way, so if you go to resources on our website, the Claris blog, you'll see at the top you have the best practices for AI server. You click on that, and then midway through it, you'll have the white paper. You can also get it from the community website as well. We have it stored as well on that page. Would you lose rank for processing or analysis? You can if you know exactly. So you would need to write a very clever prompt because you would need to explain to the model how to interpret the data that you have in your system. So just chucking it and just saying is like if you basically send like 1,000 PDF invoices and you say which one is wrong, because models are based on this idea that it has to be positive, it will say, well, everything's fine. So you would need to be able to explain what is accurate, what information that you know is valid should be found in your data in your documents. Anything that's not in those documents would need to be able to be shown as with an error and trying to work out how to actually sort of fix it. So again, like everything with AI, it's the prompt. Is how do I talk to a machine? Well, how do I write? It's not talking actually. How do I write something to a machine explaining everything that is in my brain to something that has no idea what I'm talking about? And every time it's like this, it's you have to be very specific on what you're trying to actually sort of get out of it, which is why people that basically now are becoming prompt AI engineers make fortune for big companies because they are content writers who are really good at actually figuring out how to actually talk to a model. So for data analysis, you would need to actually send everything that you know is accurate into a specific space, inform the system that information in that space is always accurate, and then for any other record that's being sent, create a new space and tell it to compare information from one space to the other based on the fact that one place has accurate data. If you have enough data. If you're giving it the whole document, it will be able to go through the whole document and able to actually transform that into the embedding that's going to be used for the search. Well, it's going to assume that everything is at the same level. So if your document's really, really long and your prompt isn't accurate enough, it's going to have issue figuring out for the word error. But if you tell it what's wrong in that document, it doesn't know. So you would need to, I mean, the one thing you would need to create a space, like I was saying, is of what you know is accurate, proper data, and say that space has validated data that I've approved that is the source of truth. And so whatever is in that document is 100% accurate. Then you send another document saying is from that document, can you verify that it follows the rules from document in that space ID? And if the model is powerful enough, so you would need a pretty good model with a lot of parameters, it would be able to actually compare those two. But then your document again has to be small enough. Your source of truth has to have enough information so that it knows what it can work with. It's easier with images because images you can compare sort of the code inside it. For text, it's a meaning that's a bit worrying. You can. Yeah, I know it works really nicely with stuff like Claude or ChatGPT because on top of everything they provide, they have specific models to be able to create files based on stuff that you give them. So even though they can't do the export, they can create inside the environment files like sort of documents. Um, with Bragg on its own, I don't know whether the Google Gemma 2 is that 3 is that powerful. It there's no reason. I mean, there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to actually sort of do it because it knows how to break down a CSV. It knows how to do all the stuff on the calculation. I'll give it a try and I'll come back to you.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you do stuff like so, the thing is, if you do stuff like Claude or Google Gemini or ChatGPT, they have those services kind of built in on the interface. Um, the API services, when you're using the API service, doesn't have all of that. So you have to figure out a way to be able to actually get all those sort of various APIs to actually work together. I'm just thinking, I mean, you could use it, you can have a GS library stored inside your FileMaker and actually just say to the model, hey, I've got those two files, put the data inside the JavaScript library and actually merge the data and it will actually recreate that for you. So,
Not really a FileMaker question, but I noticed you mentioned some models are like talking to a 5-year-old or some like a toddler. So maybe more of a general AI question. Is it moving along the lines of eventually you're talking to like a 12-year-old who's intensely focused on Minecraft, and then you're talking to a teenager who thinks she knows everything? But is the AI goal eventually kind of this uh, complete entity, like a multicultural, multilingual, multi-age, multi-gender body of knowledge that people can then draw from versus kind of thousands of separate models? I don't know if that's the ultimate end goal that some people are
but
talking about.
yeah, I think there's two visions. So there's a vision of creating um, multi-trillion parameter models, like 12 years old or 15
Mm,
years old, basically, that can answer a lot of the stuff that you want to actually ask them. The problem is, in order to actually have those, first of all, you got to train them. So there's a cost of actually
mm,
training, and then you got to run them.
yeah.
If you look at a company like OpenAI, OpenAI has an issue. Is it's a company that's worth like 300 billion US dollars, but has losses of roughly 150 billion a year, and owes a huge amount of money to a lot of companies, and a lot of companies owe OpenAI a huge amount of money because they're selling a service for dimes to the dollar. Like if you
Mm,
look like the normal ChatGPT account, which is like $25, now they're doing like a $9 account. It probably costs the service to run like $150 a month for the equivalent of what you're doing with it. So eventually it's going to come to the problem of, hey, how can we're not making money, we're losing billions. The stock market doesn't really care because we pretend it's a great world. But eventually, where is that money going to come from? And on top of that is the bigger the models, the bigger the machines. And so you have to build faster GPUs, more machine, which cost a fortune to run. And eventually it's going to be like, well, what's the issue? And then you have companies like ours, Apple, it's kind of going, well, you have the device. On device, you have some pretty powerful hardware that's being underutilized. So how about we get the models on your devices so that you don't actually have to go to the internet every 5 seconds? Because on top of it, if it's on your device, you have to use the 5G or LTE networks, which cost a lot more money to everyone else. And you have that power on your hand and you want it to be quick. So there's models basically like, and there's a few already, like stuff on the iPad or the iPhones. You have those models uh, on photo to find images or faces and dot pictures and stuff like that. That's just a basic model running on locally. And it does one thing specifically. It's looking for measurement of a face and then doing all the stuff in the background. And it doesn't need to know actually to talk Chinese to you because it's only basically looking to actually sort of stuff like that. So I think more and more we might go more into the stuff of I want a model for that specific work. Like I want a model on my machine to help me write Python script. Nothing else. I don't care about anything else. That's all it needs to do. And it needs to be really small. Same again, I need a model on my FileMaker Pro to help me write scripts. I don't want anything else about Java. Just like, I want to do a script. give me an idea, starts doing it. That's cool. Okay, verify. Go with this. This is kind of where it's going versus more there's gigantic models where you need to be a prompt engineer to figure out really what to get out of it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, Doug, I was reading, I think last week, and you know how when you're communicating with an LLM, we have a tendency to anthropomorphize it. So if they say things like thank you or please, because maybe I'll get better results if I'm kind to it, that kind of thing. Well, Sam Altman from OpenAI was saying those kinds of things are costing us millions of dollars. Which is sort of saying you don't have to say thank you or please or all that kind of stuff. But, I always think it just on the off chance that I'll get better results because I was
Wow.
nice to it, right? But when Sam's going, yeah, this is costing us millions. I'm just going, and they're talking about bringing up nuclear power plants and stuff to power this stuff. So there's a lot of computing power going on, and it is a massive loss leader. As Doug says, they
Mm.
are losing probably into the trillions of dollars, trying to
Wow.
get the stake their flag on this planet, right? So it's going to be interesting how it all falls out.
There are just the stuff like the word please. Like I'm pretty sure when everyone uses ChatGPT, and I do the same, is like, can you please create this for me? The word please, that basically is, thankfully, it's just one token for them. I think it's costing them like $25 million a day of losses for something that has no purpose. That's being
Well, yeah,
used
that's a flawed
365.
model if you think about
That is a lot of money basically
it.
for
Yeah,
just one word. So imagine all the rest around it. Eventually, uh, it gets to be kind of crazy. So there was a
The
question.
Yeah.
other, the other interesting thing is because I think the big models that are trained on is essentially crawl the entire internet, right? And I think the larger and the more general those models are, the more chance of hallucination,
Mm.
because of the nature of what it's being asked to do. And it's the A in artificial intelligence is the operative term. It's not actually intelligence. It's just math,
Mm.
right? And uh, yeah, so I think that this space becomes very interesting in what is coming out the other end. What I found is it makes a fantastic personal assistant, but you've got to bring your expertise to it. The one thing I would always caution is you have a responsibility to validate that what you're getting back based on your knowledge is what you expect. You can think about FileMaker developers and the systems you build. By the time they're done, you know exactly what's going in and what's coming out. And you're controlled everything. And now you're opening it up to sort of, hey, you tell me, right? And the example I always use is and this is way before AI, but AI makes it easier, is I've always thought that executive dashboards can be very dangerous if the information there is incorrect and you've got an executive making business decisions based on what they're seeing. It better be right, right? And so, what is our responsibility to validate that? Because the easiest thing to do is just, we've all heard the cases, the lawyer that got in trouble because he did his brief with AI and it made up some case law. The judge caught that and was pissed and he fined him. That's got to be happening a lot more often than anyone realizes, right?
Yeah, there was a question from about stuff that we're working for the future. So he's talking about. I'll just quickly share a company called N8. Essentially, it's so one of the big thing in the future that's going to come out is what we call MCP, so Model Context Protocol, which essentially is something that was created by Anthropics like 2 years ago. Like a year ago, no one knew what it meant, but it's kind of it's very similar to what we have in Claris Connect, where you have a flow talking to different API services, and depending on what you want to do, it does different things. And the one thing which is kind of nice is like this AI agent. So AI agent basically is based on the requirement of the input data that you put into the system and your prompt, instead of actually getting the model to actually try to figure out everything that it can do, it's going to figure out through this MCP server uh, which service it should be using. So imagine you have a webhook and you send data, and inside it you have um, here is basically information that I have of a customer. I need an email to be sent to that customer and a PDF and a quote to be created so that I can actually send to that customer who's been with me for 10 years. So instead of actually getting the model to do everything, like creating the email, which is in itself is easy, but not maybe sometimes not easy, do the PDF. You're using basically different AI agent to do specific work for you. So you send information, you say it's going to basically grab information to be able to go is, okay, this is what I have for the PDF. So this is information for me to create the email with the PDF and stuff like that. And that's how MCP basically works. So the question from essentially is, if I've got a lot of data, can I kind of use FileMaker currently? You can, but it's going to be very long-winded for now. We are working on an MCP server that's going to be kind of easier for people to actually leverage within FileMaker scripting and stuff like that, and it will be able to actually kind of do this work. Again, there's the importance of the model that you use in the middle to be able to actually know which API to work with, but we're working on that to actually sort of make everyone's life a lot easier. But essentially, this is going to be a lot of the like the future of even like scripting inside of FileMaker is like you would create multiple script, and then based on how the data is coming in, you would have an engine that will go, well, actually, you're telling me to use that script, but based on the data I'm getting, maybe I need to do this first, and then I can run your script. So like if you have data that's misspelled or an email address that's invalid, instead of actually just giving you an error, it would go, well, actually, that email address has been mistyped. I know who typed it like a week ago. I'm going to sell them an email saying, hey, by the way, that email was mistyped. Can you retype it and stuff like that? So you're actually getting like multiple models to actually work together to actually help you in your work. So that's kind of I would say the positive of actually the future of AI is to be able to actually say, okay, for that task, figure out what I should be using to make it easier for me to actually sort of learn it. Not the other way around of hey, here's the information and then do my work for me, like marketing companies doing now. Like, write me a marketing brief. This is information, and you have 20 pages of stuff that's been copied on the internet because it just doesn't know. It just copies stuff left, right, and center. So
Then thank you very much, Doug and Rick, for coming today and spending your time, kind of more real-time examples, more of a look behind the curtain. And we really appreciate the effort you guys are all putting in and the time you're taking to share it with everybody. So
Sure, and we absolutely appreciate you sharing the resource deck we put together. We did it for user groups, and
good.
sometimes we're surprised that how many people aren't aware of the rich resources. But I think we all realize email these days is not really a good way to communicate because you get enough emails, and the next thing you know, you're always in someone's junk folder. And
Oh yeah. Yeah, I wasn't aware of all of them. I had seen some of them, but then some just come through off. You just see the word and you don't have time to look at it. So it was nice to have it all in one spot, links and everything, good reference. And yeah.
Yeah, it is by far the most comprehensive set of supporting resources that Claris has had in the 25 years I've been here. So when I came back after being gone 4 months and joined that side of the house, I was so happy to see all of this stuff because I think it's a variety. One thing does not, it's a combination of all these possible things, and there's a lot more that we're tapping into the expertise in the community. And having them do presentations and demos and community lives. And that's where all the expertise lies. I mean, we build the Legos. You guys build Lego land, right? So you have far more expertise in the practical application of our product than we do. So that's a nice combination of resources. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time, and everyone enjoy their Wednesdays. Almost Thursday for Doug.
yeah.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.